Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? Welcome to this edition of Political Speak concerning the NFL, the protest that started by Colin Kaepernick, kneeling at the national anthem, how this affects veterans, and what President Trump recently said, and how other people feel about this country. One of the biggest issues that we have, one of the biggest problems that we have in this country is that we don't discuss nor talk about the actual problem that's going on that we have in this country. Everybody's focusing on Colin Kaepernick and the NFL players kneeling, whereas they have a right to protest. Just like anybody has a right to protest and demonstrate whatever it is they want to do. As long as you're not infringing upon the rights of another person, of the liberty to pursue the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, as long as you're not infringing on that, you have a right to protest. When Charlottesville, Virginia, they had a right to protest as long as they're not infringing on the rights of other people. Whether or not you get what you want out of your protest is a totally different scenario. If you are driving a car and running over people, you do not have a right to protest in that way, and you should go to jail. If you are blowing up buildings, you do not have a right of protesting, as in people who blew up abortion clinics. You don't have a right to protest when you infringe upon another person's right. You have a right of freedom of speech to say whatever you want to say as long as you're not infringing on the rights of other people. So there are people on my Facebook who support the South having their statues, and there are people who don't. There are people who support the NFL players kneeling, and there are those who don't. And you have a right to have your disagreement. But what you don't have a right to do is to force somebody else to do one thing or another. So I was very disappointed in what President Trump had to say. Like, this is something he shouldn't even be dealing with. He shouldn't even be touching. That's not even presidential. And here's the thing about Donald Trump, is that I actually supported you, dude, when you first came out. When you first came out, like the first 10 days. And then it started waning after that. And the thing about it, if you don't know me, I have purchased every one of his books over the last 20 years. I've read and studied him as a business person over the last 20 years. He was one of the people that I studied before I got into business myself. And the thing about it, back in the day when Ross Perot ran, I thought then we needed a business person to lead this country. So when I saw you running, Mr. Trump, I thought, good, a business person needs to run this country, because these politicians who don't know anything about business, they don't know what they're doing. They just got a bunch of economists up there with theories and plans, and then they just do stopgap things. And that was irritating me. But then you started to speak. And that's one of the things about talking. The more you talk, the more people get to understand who you really are. And although you may do well in business, in politics, you're not that good, dude. You're not doing that well. You shouldn't be in Alabama telling people to walk out of NFL stadiums if they go to the game, because Alabama doesn't have an NFL team. So you was in the wrong state to make that, really stick. It's a bad place to do it. You should have been in like Georgia or Tennessee, where they actually have an NFL team. You telling the owners that what they should do with their business is like me coming and telling you what you should do with your business. I have no right to tell you what to do with your business. But you have no right to tell anybody else what they should do with their business, especially because somebody is protesting. They're using the rights that they were given by the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And I say the Declaration of Independence as well, because in the Declaration of Independence, where you have your freedom to pursue life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, that's where you have those inalienable rights that all men are created equal. That's both in our Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And when you look at them together, that is the oath. For everybody who wants to talk about military people, that is the oath that we give. And I say we because I am a inactive Marine right now. I was born, my third birth was as a Marine. And here's my VA card, just in case you want to question it. But we give an oath to protect this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. So what is a domestic enemy? A domestic enemy is anybody or organization that is trying to take away a person's freedom in this country to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I know I keep saying pursuit, but I don't care. But to pursue that. When you try to take away somebody's rights, that's when you become a domestic enemy of what we took an oath to. So for all these people who keep using military people, want to talk about the military people in the hospitals and how you know this military person and that military person, you need to first understand that our oath is against enemies, foreign and domestic. And our oath is to the Constitution of the United States, which gives everybody the right of freedom of speech, the freedom to protest, the freedom to gather. It gives you the right to bear arms. It gives you those rights. So when you infringe upon those rights, when the police infringe upon those rights, when a guy in a car driving, running over people infringe on those rights, when some kids beat up just a guy because he's white, infringing on those rights, you are then the enemy. You are the enemy at that point. And when you sit by and say something stupid like you're just an NFL player, well, guess what? You're just a grocery packer. You're just an IT person. You're just a manager. You're just an entrepreneur. You're just a freaking human just like they are. Your job does not define who you are. And just because they have a platform that's national and you don't, doesn't give you the ability to determine what they should or should not say. And how much money somebody makes has nothing to do with it. Because if that was the case, then every politician needs to sit their tail down because they make way more money than the average person. So therefore, they have no rights to do so and speak as well. That means President Trump has no right to speak based on your thought process that just because they make millions, oh, he's a black man who makes millions, so he doesn't understand the struggle. You don't know the struggle that he went through. And let me tell you something. For all those who don't get it, when you driving down the street, don't nobody see your money. They see you either as a threat or non-threat, plain and simple. Every time a black person is getting pulled over by a cop, there's a certain level of anxiety that occurs within our system. Why does that occur? It occurs because we've been marginalized in this country. If you sit back and say that black people aren't treated unfairly in this country, then you are a fool and an idiot. Plain and simple. And if you believe that black people can just pull themselves up by the bootstraps, well, first they got to have some damn boots. And there are so many things still in this country that does not allow for you to have boots. Now let's look at the South. People talking about, and I don't mind the people protesting saying that, oh, they're destroying our history. Well, let's look at that. I said it in a video before. You're talking about a history of the loser. In what country? Iraq. Let's not even go back in time. In Iraq, when Saddam Hussein lost, they pulled down the damn statues, right? The loser had their history pulled down. Just like the African and American were the losers, and we do not have our history, which is why we go back and try to find it. Why we go back and we're researching, we're trying to, and we connect to Africa because our history was taken from us, or it was co-opted, or it was whitewashed. So when you complain about General Lee's statues being torn down, well, would you complain if they put up a statue of Hitler? Would you complain if they put up a statue of Stalin? Would you complain if they put up a statue of Kim Jong-il in this country? Would you complain? Because you shouldn't. It's part of history. It may not be part of our history, but it's part of history, American history, but it's part of world history. So would you put that up? Or would you go to Germany and expect them to have statues of Hitler all over the place? No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't think that unless you're a racist. Then you would think it. You would think it then. See, the people who lose, they lose. They lose their history. All our books are written by the winners. Every history book is written by the winners. Rome wrote the history. Greece, when they were winning, wrote the history. Egypt, when they were winning, wrote the history. China, when they were winning, wrote the history. But when China was conquered by Japan, Japan wrote the history. So the victor writes the history. Now, America, Reconstruction after the Civil War, that just shows you how much Lincoln didn't give two rats' ass about the African that was enslaved in America, because Reconstruction, they didn't care nothing about the history. They didn't care nothing about the subjugation that was going on. They didn't care nothing about the Jim Crow laws that started to come into effect. They didn't care nothing about that, which is the only reason you have your Confederate avenues and your statues of all that kind of stuff. Because if they had occupied like a normal army would have after defeating the tyranny of the South, then guess what? You wouldn't have those statues right now. You probably wouldn't even feel the way you feel. But because they didn't give two rats ass about the African who was enslaved in America, they allowed that. And by allowing that, they allowed this racism to continue to fester in this country. Because the whole goal was to keep the Union together. The Union. And while we're talking about that, let's finish this video off by talking about the flags that you've been seeing posted in this video the entire time. And you're probably wondering, what the hell is that about? Yes, you know the American flag that you call the Stars and Stripes. But did you know that that is a wartime flag? That flag was only flown at military and federal installations. That flag is designed to show we are in a time of war and that we are under military rule. That is the only purpose of the Stars and Stripes. But the other flag was the peacetime flag. That's the flag that was flown over merchants and businesses. It was the peacetime flag. It means that we're in a moment of peace. We're in a time of peace. We're under a jurisdiction of peace. But in the 1940s, guess what happened in the 1940s? In the 1940s, the federal government realized how they can take over the entire country. You see, prior to that, states flew state flags. They did not fly federal flags. But then the federal government in 1940 figured out how to make the state fly a federal flag, which put every state under federal jurisdiction, which then puts you under military jurisdiction. So if you want to know why he protests, or you want to understand more in depth about the protest, go do some research and understand how you are under martial law. You're not under peacetime law, but martial law. You're under military jurisdiction. This is why the police force have the leeway that they have. This is why the military, National Guard, has the leeway that they have, why they can be ordered into action so easily, is because you are under military law, military time, maritime law. So you need to understand that. So when you protest that flag, you're protesting being under military law. But in specifically, these players are protesting the idea that this country need to recognize that there is a problem. There is a problem in this country. There is a problem in this world, period. But there's a problem in this country when a person can't drive down the street without being harassed. I've seen videos where a black guy owns a house in a neighborhood and the police harass him about owning the house in the neighborhood. I ain't never seen you around here before. So I have a federal freedom of travel. I can go anywhere I damn well choose. Who is anybody to determine where I can or cannot go? Now, as long as I am not going on private property and trespassing, which would be stepping on someone else's rights, who is anybody? Who is any police officer? Who is any military person? Who is any person, period, to determine where I should be and where I should not be? What time I go home, what time I stay out. It doesn't matter. I have the right to go and do as I please as long as I'm not infringing on anybody else's rights. So, to conclude this video, as a military man who has served from 1990 to 1998, and you can count up everything that happened during that time frame, I am proud that my service allows for people like Kaepernick, for people like the other players to protest. And if the owners don't like it, they have the right to fire them. I don't have a problem with that either. I didn't have a problem with people not hiring Kaepernick because for whatever reason, like the Falcons don't need a backup quarterback. So they wouldn't hire him anyway, regardless of the protest. But I don't have a problem with anybody not hiring him if they don't agree with his politics or don't like what he's doing. That's their right. That is their right. So black people, I know that may piss you off too, but that is their right to do so. Because it's their company. That'll be like forcing me to hire somebody. And that's not going to happen. I'll shut my company down before you force me to hire somebody. But those companies have the right to do that. I don't have a problem with people protesting, tearing down statues of the losers of the war. But I don't have any problem with people protesting keeping the statues of the losers of the war, as long as it's peaceful. And then when it's resolved and the action happens, long as it's peaceful, long as you're not stepping on somebody else's right of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, I'm good with all your protests. You want to go on Facebook and make all your statements, your claim, go right ahead. You want to be on Facebook and you only want to show bad, black people looting and doing bad things, that's your business too. If you only want to show white people, doing bad things, that's your right too. I don't think it's fair. I think you're a hypocrite if you do that. I think you're racist if you do that. But you have the right to be racist. How about that? You have the right to be racist as long as you don't try to take away anybody's ability for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it's so unfortunate that the President of the United States does not understand that. That is the most unfortunate thing. That the President does not understand that his job is to make sure that everybody has the right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's the oath that you sign. That's the oath that you pledge to. That your job is just to make sure that this country gets better. You say make America great again. My former father-in-law, who passed away some years ago, born in 1927. America was never great for him growing up. It wasn't great for him as an adult. America didn't start getting better. America got better for him as he got older. So I don't know what the again part is. The again part only speaks to white people. It doesn't speak to black people at all. At all. Because America is getting better. And I do understand. With each generation, America's getting better because a lot of the ignorance dies. And the internet is making us more global. So I'm loving the direction of America. We still have some pains to go through, and we'll go through those pains. Hopefully we'll go through them together, and we'll learn to recognize that this is just skin, man. This is just skin. This is just hair. It doesn't determine who I am. It doesn't determine the character of who I am. So anyway, all right. Like I said, I pledge to fight all enemies, foreign and domestic. And right now, we have more domestic enemies than we have foreign enemies. And maybe that's where our energy should be pointed. So y'all have a great day. Enjoy yourself. Remember, you got to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable.